Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the weekly City Club Forum. My name is Herb Cam. I'm president of the City Club. Some time ago, as most of you are probably familiar, the Regional Transit Authority propounded the wisdom of constructing what is generally known as a dual hub transit system that would reach from Public Square to University Circle. In keeping with its policy of bringing before you and our listening and viewing audience matters of urgent public interest, the City Club today is delighted to have as its speaker Frederick E. Pizzedaz, the Executive Director of NOACA, whose formal title is the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. NOACA is a publicly controlled agency which has a board of directors made up of locally elected officials from the 5 counties of Cuyahoga, Geauga, Lake, Lorraine, and Medina. And Mr. Pizzedaz is one of our more durable public officials, having been executive director of NOACA for the last 9 years. The dual hub proposal is but one of a number of issues to which Fred will address himself today. Let me tell you just a little about him. He's a native of Alliance, Ohio. He came to NOACA from the city of Cleveland, where he served as Commissioner of Redevelopment and then as Executive Commissioner of the Department of Community Development. He's a graduate of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Marshall Law School. He currently holds or has held seats on the boards of the National Association of Regional Councils and the Metropolitan Health Planning Corporation, as well as memberships in such organizations as the Ohio and American Bar Associations, the Practicing Law Institute, the Urban Land Institute, the American Society of Planning Officials, and the Ohio Association of Regional Councils. I'm pleased to present to you today Frederick E. Pizzedaz, Executive Director of NOACA. Fred?
Thank you very much, Herb. I'm very impressed to be introduced by the legend in his own time, the editor of the Cleveland Press, and I mean that most sincerely. I approached the podium today with some temerity, partly because what we at NOACA do is so little known, and partly because I have a healthy respect for both the tradition and the reputation represented by this forum. The City Club, as a bastion of free speech and diverse views, is both a compelling and exciting part of the urban fabric we call Cleveland, Northeast Ohio. I sometimes speculate as to whether the early pioneers of this forum, started in 1912, planned for its future to the extent that we share this time today. Did they envision the City Club being like this in 1982? And what of the future of this club? The club and the forum is currently planning for a move. To where? How big will it be? What will it look like in the future? Those decisions are being discussed and will be made soon, not because the City Club wants it, but because of an event that is an exciting event for the future of Cleveland. Those decisions are planning decisions. Those decisions made now will affect the future of this forum for many years to come. And I've used the word planning. Now, what is planning? Well, planning has been defined as man's attempt to minimize regret. Alternatively, life and death are events that happen to us while we're busy planning. Perhaps a more serious definition is that, in our case, in our federal system of public sector, consisting of national, state, local governments, with their differing points of view and potential for conflict and collision, planning is forced to seek consensus, but never permitted to achieve it. We all plan. We may not call it planning, but if we budget our income, put away money for our children's college, think about vacations, where, why, how long, prepare a list so we don't forget something when grocery shopping, or put away paper route proceeds for a moped, such as my son is currently doing. Is not all of that planning? NOACA, the Northeast Ohio Area-Wide Coordinating Agency. Its job is planning. Planning for several important aspects of life and environment. For the 5 counties which comprise this Cleveland, Northeast Ohio region. Entrusted to NOACA is planning for the future of its transportation, the environment, be it air, water quality, solid waste, housing, open space, parks, for the fully 20 to 25% of Ohio's population who reside in and around this city. By the way, as Herb introduced me, NOACA is not a separate layer or a somehow invisible level or unit of government. We are a coalition of existing general purpose local governments. Let me emphasize that. Local governments, counties, cities, villages, and townships. We are a 45-person board of directors who are themselves local elected officials representing their own and neighboring communities. We are collective localism, if you will. We have no taxing authority. We don't operate a bus system. We don't collect garbage, and we do not put out fires. We do investigate the future. We do help existing local governments seize opportunities and avoid pitfalls that lie before them. We do help the region as a whole, striving toward where it needs and wants to be 5, 10, even 20 years from now. We survive and prosper only to the extent that local government, all 1,200 units of local government in this 5-county area, support by action and with dollars that which we do. In times like these, when unrelenting inflation is high, when current unemployment is double-digit in this state, who'd ever thought it, is extremely severe in this region and getting worse, when budgets of all local units of government are tight, it is in such times that pooling talent, experience, ideas, and financial resources is the better way, perhaps the best and only way, to deal with both our near-term and long-term future. Apparently, the greater Cleveland region agrees, because support for what NOACA offers and has offered for the past 15 years has never been stronger. We all succeed or fail together. We need put our hearts and heads together to point our destiny in directions that will get us where we have to be by the 21st century. We simply will not survive as an urban area if we do not carefully isolate our real options and selectively pick and choose that which we hope to accomplish. This effort, by the way, is not unique to Cleveland or Northeast Ohio. This kind of work is going on in Chicago, Los Angeles, Atlanta, Houston, all of the major metropolitan areas in these United States. Peer agencies to NOACA in those areas remain in constant contact to share breakthroughs in ideas, programs, and efficiencies, each with the other. Today, however, I'd like to discuss with you at least 2 issues, which, in our view, are of particular importance to the future of our entire area. Those issues are our transportation system and our housing stock. In the field of transportation, we are examining actions necessary to keep our highways and public transit systems functioning. That is, actions that will maximize the ability of these systems to get people and goods transported where they need to go in 1985, 1990, and to the year 2000. I doubt that I need remind each of you that the vast majority of us work at a location that is not within easy walking distance from our homes. Our economy in this region is complex and varied. It demands a variety of skills and talents to function efficiently. It requires that such skills and talents, that willing and capable hands and minds, must be able to get to employment locations reliably, efficiently, safely, and each and every work day. A system that delivers this employment labor force every day is, by the way, the same transportation system which moves goods, raw materials, products, and services daily throughout our 5 counties. The system I speak of consists of several different but interdependent subunits, including highways, transit, trucks, ports and harbor, freight rail, airports, and airlines. Folks, all components of that system are in trouble. NOACA is, at this moment, focusing on the highway and transit units of that system. In the coming year, we expect to look at the freights and good movement component of that system. But currently, we're examining improvements necessary to keep our highways and public transit systems functioning efficiently and usefully for the next 20 years. A piece of that system on the transit side has been advanced for action and is a point of discussion today. That is the dual hub corridor linking the two major regional employment centers of downtown Cleveland with the University Circle area. Improvements to make the transit part of our interdependent network work more effectively could and can take a variety of forms, including widening streets to include bus-only lanes, improving signal systems to best accommodate transit vehicles, limiting auto access to major streets which carry large amounts of transit service, design of transit stations which facilitate transfer to transit from bus, rail, auto, and walkways and back again, modification of existing bus and/or rail systems, and addition of new facilities for transit and transit users. Whatever form these improvements take, transit should, from the regional or area-wide viewpoint, be targeted toward the largest number of people making frequent trips essential to the economic and social well-being of our greater Cleveland area. By the way, whether it's Toronto, Tokyo, Los Angeles, or Cleveland, transit works only when large numbers of people regularly travel between the same places at the same time. Most other types of trips are perhaps better undertaken by a different form of transportation. Identifying and accessing the market just now described will provide the most efficient, most cost-effective, and those improvements most likely to make a real difference in both the economic performance and social viability of any urban area, including our own. There was a time when transit could afford to serve scattered trips as an alternative to auto use for persons who were financially well off enough to have a choice of how they traveled. That era appears over. Today, transit needs to be clearly focused on serving people who have no access to a car, to persons who work in employment centers where parking and highway capacity is limited, so that some employees must leave cars at home. After all, our highway system cannot handle more auto traffic in and around major employment centers. We also need to address trips made by handicapped and elderly persons who literally could not make an essential trip unless that trip is provided as a public service. Clearly, given current conditions, trips to jobs must be the most important factor in determining our transportation choices. With that background, and through a process that took 3 years and attracted the participation of many elected officials, our private sector, 3 transit operators, many citizens and residents of the entire area, the conclusion was reached, a choice was made for our transit future. We are now preparing for Urban Mass Transit Administration consideration a proposal to identify appropriate alignments and technologies to interconnect the region's 2 massive employment centers, as well as improving auto and transit distribution within the Cleveland Central Business District. This focused study of transit improvements will be accomplished in a framework which makes best use of facilities and services already in place. It will generate a system design which can be feasibly financed and which will accommodate the needs for travel by persons and businesses of Greater Cleveland between now and the year 2000. It is important to realize that such a system serves the whole Cleveland area, not just one side of one town. Nor does it just serve the persons and businesses located in the immediate vicinity, in the case of dual hub, along the Euclid, Chester, Superior, or Carnegie corridors. Whatever the solution, technically and politically arrived at, that solution will cost money. To those who say, let's not study it, let's save the money, I say, save it for whom? The problem exists. We currently have a transit system that appears to utilize its rail lines as just another bus line. It competes with itself, buses and rail. It has one rail station or stop in downtown, the only major rail system in the world laying claim to that dubious distinction. It is not a problem of management. It is not a problem of RTA policy. It is a problem with the system. To those who say, use the money for something else, I say to them, the money cannot be used for something else. To those who say the corridor contains real and potential private development, and therefore why should it be helped? I offer you the response first initiated under UDAG, the Urban Development Action Grant Program, which is to say we have scarce public dollars, and they're getting scarcer all the time. We need to invest those public dollars in ways and areas so as to maximize the private dollar investment that will be attracted to such public investment. Finally, on this point, to those who would suggest that a subway is in the offing, that an elevated Buck Rogers-type futuristic rail link is anticipated, that a heavy rail link is programmed, that an exclusive busway is the way to go, I assure you that only rational options will be examined in depth. To those who claim that ultimately nothing will be built, my response is simply, you may be right. The point is that the study before us will examine each of the alternatives and recommend a conclusion based on economics and efficiency. Parenthetically, I would state we have gotten astray with thinking that we need to provide rail access to the downtown area and University Circle. Let me quietly say University Circle has rail access to it today. The downtown, though limited, has access to it. But what about the Cleveland Clinic? What about CSU? What about all those developments that we know about, either real or intended, in that corridor between those two hubs? I would submit we have no rail access to them today. Finally, the most basic conclusion will be, can we afford it, and does it work? What about that part of the city between these two employment hubs of downtown and University Circle? What is its future? Are we talking about placing a major transportation route in the middle of a vast wasteland? Much of this so-called wasteland is where thousands of people presently live. Can we say anything positive about the residential future of that area? Indications are that we can. NOACA has just completed a study of home sale prices in Cuyahoga County over the past 5 years. During that period, the median price appreciation in Cuyahoga suburbs was 22%. That is, half of all suburbs showed price appreciation greater than 22%, and half showed less than that. The city of Cleveland appreciated 6% in home sales, which is what most people would expect of a city, which, since 1970, has lost 1/4 of its population, demolished 1 out of 10 of its dwelling units, gone into and out of default, and has represented a standard litany of economic and social ills. Many say that the city of Cleveland is the last place to consider investing money. And at first glance, our findings seem to support this attitude. 6% appreciation in home sales during the period when most suburbs were above 17%. But what I'm going to tell you in a moment challenges that view of Cleveland. Let me get to the point by asking, why should all of Cleveland's neighborhoods be lumped into a single citywide figure or average? We don't do that to suburbs. We don't say the average price of a single-family home in the eastern suburbs of Cuyahoga County is $78,000 and leave it at that. We know that suburbs vary greatly in size and housing values, and we typically consider each individually. The The city of Cleveland is a single unit of government. But if we were to examine its population, for example, in terms of neighborhoods, we would quickly see that the Buckeye Shaker neighborhood has about the same population as Middleburg Heights. The Clark Fulton neighborhood has about the same population as Parma Heights. Glenville has more population than 51 of the 59 suburbs in this county. Even Huff, which has lost 45% of its population during the decade of the 70s, is still as large as South Euclid. I think you can begin to see the point. Cleveland is not a single housing market. It is comprised of numerous submarkets. At the neighborhood level, of which there are 35, a different picture of price appreciation emerges. Our findings show a range of price increases and, yes, a few decreases. At the census tract level, which is a much smaller geographic unit than a neighborhood, and of which there are 185 in Cleveland, a more clear and perhaps a truer picture of price appreciation emerges. Disaggregation of the Cleveland housing market into submarkets yields not a relatively low 6% price appreciation across the board city of Cleveland, but a number of highly significant increases. Over the past 5 years, 1/3 of Cleveland's neighborhoods have showed home price increases greater than 1/3 of the suburbs of Cuyahoga County. Let me repeat that because that's not the kind of news we're used to hearing about Cleveland. Over the past 5 years, 1/3 of Cleveland's neighborhoods showed home price increases greater than 1/3 of the suburbs in Cuyahoga County. Fairfax, up 58%. Kinsman, 55% appreciation. St. Clair Superior, 40%. Woodland Hills, 31%. Ohio City, 24%. Corlett, 22%. North Collinwood, 21%. Mount Pleasant, 21%. Glenville, 21%. Euclid Park, 20%. Buckeye Shaker, 20%. Ladies and gentlemen, those percentage increases are not to be taken lightly when you consider that they exceeded such significant suburbs as Brooklyn, Olmsted Falls, Parma, Brook Park, where I live, Mayfield Heights, Euclid, Middleburg Heights, South Euclid, Berea, Fairview Park, and several others. The housing market in Cleveland appears to be far from dead, particularly that housing in the $15,000 to $30,000 price range. We may be seeing the results of a double squeeze in the marketplace, consisting of high interest rates and large numbers of young adults in need of housing. Everybody knows the present interest rate, 17% plus or minus, plus points, etc. And everyone knows that our county population is declining. But does everybody know that the number of young adults in this county will increase 15,000 this year, 15,000 in '83, and 15,000 in 1984? Why? Well, the post-war baby boom is maturing. We will not hit our peak number of young adults, those defined as between the ages of 25 and 39, until 1985. And in that year, there will be more potential home buyers in Cuyahoga County than in any time in this county's history. Where are those people going to live? Where will they buy a home? If interest rates continue in the mid to high teens, the answer for many is likely to be, yes, the city of Cleveland, where there is still a considerable amount of housing in that $15,000 to $30,000 price range, and a lot that is quite a bit more expensive than that. For the first time, perhaps since 1950, economic forces appear to be working for Cleveland neighborhoods rather than against them. These forces may well act to bring people to Cleveland rather than to continue to take them away. The results of the NOACA study, which I report to you today, may well indicate that this has begun. The current high interest rate is a two-sided coin. While it hurts many people, it can provide benefits to the city of Cleveland. Examples of such benefits to Cleveland would include a strengthened population, young adults, possibly more, or probably some with better incomes and good income potential than we currently have, a stronger tax base to support city services, and most significantly, new market strength, which is needed to attract developers, builders, and investors. Let me note, such benefits could also bring new problems to the city, including displacement of existing renters, speculative buying, and current property owner manipulation. Existing homeowners could certainly provide more increases in Existing homeowners could easily pay increases in property taxes occasioned by higher values as more sales occur in an ascending scale. Now, to alleviate this, the city administration and council, together with neighborhood organizations, may need to initiate planning, there's that word again, and program activities with the dual objectives of gaining new residents and minimizing consequent problems for present residents. Finally, taken on balance, the housing report I've tried to suggest to you today and the corridor between downtown and University Euclid provides us the notion that the likelihood of housing revitalization in Cleveland, which would form the residential context for the dual hub alternative discussed earlier, appears quite promising. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Today at the City Club Forum, we are listening to an address by Frederick Pizzedaz, Executive Director of NOACA. In just a moment, we'll have our traditional question and answer session, but first, let me make a few announcements, please. Most of you in the audience here today know about this, but I'd like to say for the benefit of those listening on radio and on television that in May, a group from the City Club is traveling to Ireland for a week of special events featuring on Friday, May 14th, our regular forum in Ireland with our expected speaker, who would be the Prime Minister of Ireland. We still have a few places left in this group, so if anyone listening now would like to go with us, call Alan Davis here at the City Club, 621-0082, for all the details, and he will be glad to provide you with an attractive brochure. I might mention that when the group departs, I will be there to see them off and deliver a rendition of Mother McCree in my Western Irish accent. Next week, our speaker will be the former hostage in Iran, Moorhead Kennedy, who resigned from his position in the Foreign Service and is now director of the Cathedral Peace Institute in New York. His topic will be a new view of peacemaking. I might mention that about a year ago, I had the privilege of listening to Moorhead Kennedy speak in Washington to the American Society of Newspaper Editors, and I can assure you this is an appearance and a speech that you will not want to miss. I might also mention that future speakers will include on March 12th, John Lehman, the Secretary of the Navy, on the 19th, Representative Barbara Mikulski, and then on March 26th, and I would remind you that this is for club members only because of the great demand for tickets, the Reverend Jerry Falwell of Moral Majority. Now for questions for Mr. Fred Pizzedaz about any issues affecting our community that you would like to pose. We have Alan Davis with a microphone in the forward part of the room and Bob Conrad at the rear. Please raise your hand to be recognized. Fred, will you come forward again, please?
Fred, I have two questions concerning transportation in the area. One is about I-480. I've been going to the airport for a long time, and from the east side to the west side, and I understand one of the big, and it's a mess, and I understand one of the big problems is coordinating the political bodies in that area, the state, the county, the city, one squabbling with the other, nobody wants to pay, so we're not getting a road. And I'd like your comments on that. The second is I'd like you to compare, if you would, MARTA with RTA. I know in Atlanta they support a big transit system with a 1% sales tax. We have a 1% sales tax here in Cleveland, and we don't get near what Atlanta gets for their sales tax. We get their old buses.
All right, the two questions concerned, I guess, to truncate it, when the devil are we going to finish I-480, right? There are 3 sections of Interstate 480 left to be completed. Coming from Garfield Heights down the hill to Brook Park Road, that section is completed. Brook Park Road is the boundary of the city of Cleveland. Coming from the west, the last section that was opened currently drops you off from a west-east direction behind Uncle Bill's at 139th and Brook Park. That represents the boundary of the city of Cleveland. So the state has got the city of Cleveland like this, with all of 480 completed, but for 3 pieces. All 3 of those pieces are physically within the city of Cleveland. They're called 3 pieces because they've been broken into 3 sections. It's my understanding that one of those 3 sections is ready for sale and hopefully will be sold yet this calendar year. Even more hopefully yet this fiscal year. I would judge sometime in the July, perhaps June, July, August framework. The other 2 sections have things physically wrong with them. They're not ready for sale. There are 2 pipelines, for example, gas transmission lines that literally bisect the 2 sections where the roadway would go, so they have to be taken care of. The question of the money involved, and I'm not telling any of you anything, has simply been an argument over the final 5%. We know that the Fed, through the U.S. Department of Transportation, will make 90 cents on the dollar for construction available. The state has indicated a willingness to pay a nickel, thus leaving a nickel. The county, through Tom Neff, county engineer, and the Board of County Commissioners, Eddie Feehan, Vince Campanella, and Verge Brown, have indicated their willingness to pick up 2.5 cents or go halfway with the city. Well, now we're down to a precious 2.5 pennies, folks. The city has indicated neither interest nor willingness nor ability to come up with the other 2.5 cents. So the latest appears to be that the county will advance Cleveland the other 2.5 pennies out of its share of the $5 license tax, which we all pay in this county, and thus the project can go forward. Personally, I have seen a distinct thawing in the freeze of non-cooperation among those levels of government over the past year. It's taken a lot of work by a lot of people, and as we've indicated in other forums, nobody's the bad guy in this, and there's no good guy in this. It's simply everybody has a position to maintain, and everybody is grudgingly but inexorably moving off their position so that we can conclude the project. And that's all I'll say about that. Regarding MARTA Atlanta and RTA Cuyahoga County, I think MARTA has an environment that's much smaller, circumscribed than is RTA. I think its line or its network of transportation, mass transportation, is much more concise than is RTA. I think MARTA grew up in a different environment than RTA grew up, its predecessors being here, of course, Shaker and CTS. And quite candidly, I think that RTA, when rated against MARTA, 30 old buses notwithstanding, will come out at least satisfactorily. Let's not forget that Atlanta's a little bit different living environment in terms of the weather than RTA Cleveland is or Cuyahoga County is, and that would be for openers. Now, I am not an apologist for RTA. Lord knows there's enough wrong with it. We could all take turns at pointing fingers. But from our perspective, we'll try and look at the overall system and not individual component parts of it and do what we can to encourage both the board and management of RTA that they fix what they've got and make it work better. And that seems to me to be the charge before this RTA board and this management of RTA over the next several years. I would call it containment planning, if you will.
Mr. President, you was talking about ideas and studies. I know when Sirio County give any studies, cost them thousands of dollars. I have a make study which not going to cost you a penny. That is the potholes we have every winter in the streets, the destruction of the bridges plus the cars. So into my study, I have find out that we spread the cancer of the streets and the bridges every winter on the streets. That is the salt. Now, think that you have small crevice in the asphalt. Soon the weather gets cold, that would freeze in it, in that crevice. If you leave it there, it's just like you have a cement there, till the weather gets warm to melt. But what we do, soon that cold weather comes, we spread salt. Now, when you put salt on the ice, when it's in a melting state, it's 32 degrees. Think back when they was making ice cream, how they reduced the temperature on the ice by putting salt. Now, by putting salt on that ice, listen, over here, we bankrupt our nation. You ask me for question, listen first. When you put that salt there, you melt the ice. You lower the temperature, the asphalt get brittle. Now you have the opening and the tires going over. Each time your tire goes over, chips another piece of the asphalt. That's the way you create them. Now, the bridges, put on your sidewalks.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm going to have to ask for the question. I think we all know how to make ice cream.
My question is, when can I meet you someplace so we talk it over?
Well, with that accent, if I'm not mistaken, I'll meet you anytime, anywhere. You sound like one of mine. Our offices are at 1501 Euclid Avenue in the Seltzer Building. In the Seltzer Building at 1501 Euclid Avenue in the heart of Playhouse Square. Come over and chat with us anytime. Sounds interesting.
Mr. Pizzedaz, do you have any feeling for why there was an increase in sale price in certain areas of the central city? From your map, it appears that they're primarily on the east side, and there has to be some explanation. Do you have any that you could propose?
Well, the study that we just concluded really took a 2-year period, 77 through 79, and compared it with, in effect, a 19-month period, 18 or 19-month period of all of 80 in the first 9 months of calendar 1981. The reason for that is that we didn't have the data tapes available for the last quarter of calendar year 1981, so that's as current as we could get. Obviously, it calls for some additional and ongoing updating. We'd love to do it quarter by quarter, but that takes money, and we all know that money is a sorely lacking commodity for all of us these days. But I think the significance of the findings are really, in the first instance, that Cleveland is not one market. It is several markets. We have tried to show that, in fact, several of the submarkets are healthy and getting healthier. There are certain areas of the west side of the city of Cleveland that do not show a healthy increase when compared either the 80-81 study or, in fact, the 77 through 79 study. Part of that, I suspect, is because in the 77 to 79 period, the west side was literally a forest of for sale signs. And I think that tends to confuse an otherwise fairly clear market. I think that the west side has started to straighten or sort that out, and you don't nearly see the kind of sale activity that you did in those years. And I would suspect, quite candidly, that over the next 18 months to 2 years, you'll see the west side showing healthy appreciation in sales as the east side has to now.
Mr. Pizzedaz, I wonder what happened to that plan of the railroads. You're going to use the railroad to the southwest section, then you're going to use one towards past Brea, then you're going to go towards Strongsville, then you're going to use southeast, the Erie-Lackawanna Railroad to go southeast towards Bedford, and then you're going to use the New York Central going through Euclid all the way to Willoughby. What happened to all those plans?
All right, fair question. Each of those areas he's described are contained within the other 4 corridors beyond the so-called labeled dual hub corridor, and they survive. Those 4 corridors, by policy board action of the NOACA board at the same meeting that it approved the dual hub for further alternatives analysis study, each of those 4 corridors is being offered for what they call TSM, or Transportation System Management Improvements, which we counseled the board probably will mean that each of the areas you describe will not have a rail answer. Dual hub necessarily won't have one either, but probably will be done in terms of improvements a lot quicker in point of time than any treatment in the dual hub corridor, necessarily because the dual hub requires another or a second phase study. Transportation system management improvements, fixing what's there and improving, getting rid of the bottlenecks to the impeding of traffic flow in each of those corridors can be done at a much quicker pace and time. And we think there will be fixing the containment planning I spoke of earlier. I think that's where it'll have its highest ideal. Containment planning simply is 2 things I would suggest to you. One is to make do and make better that which you have before you trash it, as we tend to do in this country all too often, and seek another solution. And secondly, I think we may in this area be facing decisions over the next 10 to 15 years that will say we have 2 choices in a corridor. We'll say there is a bridge at point A and a bridge at point B. Each carry traffic badly because each is in need of major repair. Pick one. We will concentrate our resources on fixing that one and let the other go into a state of disrepair. That's what I said earlier. All of the subcomponents of our transportation system are in trouble. We provided testimony to Chairman Ike Thompson of the Special Bridge Committee in the Ohio House about 2 weeks ago at City Council chambers. I won't bore you with the repetitiveness of that testimony except to suggest the conclusion. We provided bridge by bridge, location by location, cost by cost, the needs just in this 5-county Northeast Ohio region for bridges only. Now remember, doesn't make any difference if you fix the street. If the bridge is out, you're not going anywhere. All right? The bottom line for the bridges just in this region over the next 5 to 7 years, $463 million. And we do not today, nor can I tell you I have reasonable anticipation to expect tomorrow, 1 penny to alleviate that problem.
Mr. Pizzedaz, I presume for this corridor from downtown out to University Circle that's been discussed much, that a good part of the money is figured to come from the federal government. I just spent 2 days this week for the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics figuring out all of the different cuts that could be made in their programs, and some of them have been cut as much as 50%, and programs that have been 50 years old have been cut out altogether. And this is scheduled for fiscal year 82, 83, 84. In view of the great shortage of federal money for everything, what makes you think you can get the federal money for this corridor?
In terms of its planning, we're reasonably confident that we have the planning money available to us to do it. We tried to take care of that fully 2 years ago. In terms of its construction, I can't tell you that. I can tell you that the Urban Mass Transit Administration, which is not a 50-year-old department, but only since '64, so it's fairly young in the federal establishment, is cutting operating subsidies a third over the next 3 fiscal years. That'll cost RTA locally about $16 to $20 million. They're also actively considering dropping the capital match from its current 80% the Fed pays, 20% the rest of us pay, to a 50-50 match. If that goes through, it'll further exacerbate the problem. I trust it won't go through and be put into law. The point is, however, the wheel that goes around comes around. Do we not plan today because we know today we don't have the money to build it? If we would say, let's go and construct it a week from Tuesday, A, we don't have the money to do it, and B, we don't have the plans to do it anyway. Do we wait until an administration, perhaps a future generation, not a future generation, hopefully, a future administration won't say, as this one has, transit is a local business. Transit is a local service. If you want transit, folks, in the country, pay for it locally. If you don't want it, then don't have it. That, I think, is a fair assessment of, not my words, but this administration's initiative relative to transit all over the country. I'm confident that that's not going to be a generational response. What I'm saying to you is, do you not plan today because you don't have the money with which to build today? I'm not smart enough to make that choice. I have seen many opportunities lost to this city, Cleveland, this area, and this state because of an attitude that says if we're going to not build it till tomorrow, let's not plan it till tomorrow. I would suggest that could tend to be self-defeating.
Fred, to what degree will the existing condition of the school system impact or inhibit what you're talking about as the growth of housing in the Cleveland area?
I'm an abiding optimist, or maybe a skeptical optimist. I have an abiding faith in the fabric of this community, and I think that education currently, so as not to avoid your question, education currently is a major factor on the minds of anybody making a value decision as to whether they should move back into the city of Cleveland. I think in the near term it won't matter, because our figures show that the people we're talking about, the young adult population, are A, perhaps living together or cohabiting but not getting married until a later time, and B, even those that are marrying early are starting families later because of the economics of the situation and our own lifestyles. So I don't think that, and then you're talking about, given Mother Nature, I guess, a 5 to 6 to 7 year time period before you have to worry about making a decision choice on education. So I think education, in terms of what we're suggesting, is a decision point 5 to 10 years in the future in most of these statistics. Hopefully by then we'll have it solved, one way or the other.
Fred, in the old days, when I used to be up on your doors when I was busy with the League of Women Voters, I can assure you that when we talked about improvements in transportation, we used to worry about energy conservation, and we used to worry about environmental possibilities of progress by better planned transportation. I thought it was interesting that your speech today was very interesting, but did not refer to those two. But my question is of a slightly different nature. In looking at the demographics, maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to me that a lot of the people who presently live in those city neighborhoods in the corridor that you're addressing today have to go to the suburbs and need good transportation to move from the city neighborhoods to the suburban areas where the industrial research parks have developed. And while your plan is very appropriate perhaps for the revitalization of the city, I'm wondering whether there are other priorities that we need to consider right now.
Priorities in terms of transit direction? Yes. That argument was well and truly made during the 3-year period, and quite honestly, the choice was one or the other. Do you start back at the core of the system and reinforce it so that it works right for a change, or do you continue to extend your lines outward into new directions, trying to reach out to new industrial parks in the suburbs, or chase subdivisions where residents live in the suburbs, within the county and outside the county into suburban counties? And I think given the cost of one or the other, I think the choice was truly made that we start back at the beginning and fix what we've got and make it work right, perhaps for the first time. Consider about 32% of the ridership on the buses throughout the RTA system generates from this areas within this dual hub corridor. If a majority of that 32% of the ridership, in fact, could find a solution, such as we're proposing, and I won't tell you the mode because I don't know it. Well, let's just assume a light rail at grade, all right? Yes, getting back to the old days of the trolley, we'll say. Can you imagine the number of buses that could be released from that duty and instead used to undergird other parts of the system in some of the suburbs where complaints are being had today that the buses don't show up, and when they do show up, they're not in good shape, and if I get on the bloody thing, chances are it stops halfway to downtown, and now I'm late for work, and thank you, I'll take the car tomorrow. Now, in terms of your comment earlier about energy and air quality, I didn't forget it. I had just hoped that by now we would all have assumed it.
Fred, the housing appreciation study, I wonder if you know enough about the data to know if there's any correlation between some of the targeted public rehab programs and private rehab programs. Is there any correlation between that effort and the appreciation?
There's been no specific intent on our part to sub-filter, if you will, or sub-analyze the data to match it up with NSA areas, neighborhood strategy areas, public side investment or private side investment. If you're asking me, can that be done, the answer is most specifically yes, but we did not take it that far at this point. That may well be a point for the future.
Fred, the realism that's coming out of this report is that if you move to the suburbs with a minimum down payment, it's going to cost you $650 to $800 a month to carry a house with a minimum down payment. And you can move into the city and perhaps have a house for $250 to $300 a month, is what I'm seeing. Is there any mechanism through NOACA to spread this report so that it can benefit these neighborhood groups that Ken was talking about, and also to the banking industry, savings and loans, the real estate industries?
One of the finest forums for doing that is the City Club Forum, which is why we decided to announce the results of the study here today. Follow-up work will obviously access each of the groups you talk about. It has been said to me, and I don't necessarily believe it, that banks and savings and loans were a little bit annoyed at us for doing the mortgage loan study that we did twice over the past 4 to 5 years. Very annoyed. Why should anybody be looking at where mortgage loans are being placed by banks and savings and loans? We did 2 significant investment reports. We think that had a great audience, not generally with the general public or the body politic, but with those in the business. We would suggest that this will too, and we obviously will make a determined effort to access as many places to see and understand and analyze this data further than even we have. So yes. Let me say parenthetically that what we may also be talking about here is another look at our housing delivery system. I would suggest that most of the way we're cast in this country and in this area, in the real estate market, mortgage lenders, brokers, the way we sell property, the way we place ads to sell property, and what I'm talking about here is no bad guys, no pointing of fingers. It's just the whole housing delivery system is pointed outward. If there's any significance in what we've tried to suggest to you today, we as part of that system, the lenders, the real estate brokers, the newspapers, are going to have to take a little different look at the way we market property if we're talking about bringing it back. A little bit different look than we have in the past. So it could be exciting news for everybody.
I would just like to make a statement about the west side of Cleveland. I live on the west side. I'm very much interested in the west side because I live in it. I know about the east side and some of their problems. But I'm in the west side area, and I want to know about the transportation on these lines. There's different ones, of course, I know. And are they going to be extended further out? Are they going to cut some of them off? And that's what I'd like to know. And out at Fairview, which I happen to know, I know their expansion is out there. And what about some of those housing problems out in that area? And also out in Parma, I pay rent, so I don't own a home. But I would like to know all these things and what is it coming to be in the future, and of the homes on the west side and the outer areas where they can have clean air. I know some people move out in the suburbs to get away from these areas.
I don't know how to answer that except to suggest to you, that the west side of the city, although our study shows that the appreciation in value has not been as significant as some neighborhoods on the east side, that the absolute price for sale of property on the west side remains higher than that on the east side. I also suggested that I think that the areas that are not showing a big price appreciation on the west side may in fact turn around over the next, and may already be turning around quite candidly, over this year and next year to come in terms of value. So I'm a bit more confident about the west side than that. In terms of Parma, I don't know what to tell you about Parma.
Fred, only you have to come to work in the morning to realize that more and more people are driving their car, excuse me, their cars to work. And I think it's part due to the weather, I think. But the main thing is they're starting to raise the prices of the bus and also the Rapid to a point where people are saying it's cheaper to drive to work. And the same, it's part of the same question. If you made studies that would help us as it comes to these public hearings that RTA is going to sponsor, to let them know that there's got to be a point after which people aren't going to pay. But also, in part of that question I want you to answer is, do you think there's a price after which a poor person can no longer afford to go to work? That is, where they're pricing themselves out of the business.
You're talking about a tipping point in a price scale, and quite honestly, if you know anything about econometrics, we do some econometric modeling, and tipping point price beyond which people will take an alternative choice or make an alternative choice is obviously a key criteria in such a study. We do that all the time, but it's a sliding scale. I guess a tipping point for transit was at a point certain when gasoline was $1.26 per gallon, but now gasoline's chasing down $1.14 because you have a temporary, at least, glut of sweet oil from OPEC and around the country, and now we've got more inventory than we can use. So obviously the market forces being what they were, we're dropping the price of gas. By the way, those of you who don't know, the price of gas in terms of its tax went up 1.4 cents to the state of Ohio, I believe, today. And but you'll not reflect that because I'm sure that'll be, that 1.4 cents will be absorbed at least over the near term. So the answer is it's fairly flexible. It's hard to say. In terms of your question, at what point will a poor person not go on transit? I say if you need transit to get to the job, you'll make other choices. You'll have to, maybe you won't eat as much. And that's a devilish choice, a terrible choice to have to make, but one that people do make.
You mentioned hundreds of millions of dollars for rehabilitation or new public works. Is there any planning or any sense of stewardship in all of this planning to take care of what the people have?
Yes, sir. Very quick answer to that question. Yes, sir, and getting more intense all the time. Many groups work in this community now, and we like to think we're a significant part of that, acting as custodians for that physical infrastructure that we just cannot continue to trash and go on as we have perhaps in the past. That we're reaching an era we're going to have to make do with what we have and make it work better.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fred Pizzedaz. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us this afternoon. We'll see you at next Friday's forum. The City Club Forum for today is adjourned.